Greg Afarian here, and I'm going to be giving you my market news update, news events that were important this week of the 18th, January 18th. And I want to start off with today's speech by President Obama about the banks and proposing new limits on the sizes and depth of the banks in the banking sector.
But even as we dig our way out of this deep hole, it's important that we not lose sight of what led us into this mess in the first place. This economic crisis began as a financial crisis, when banks and financial institutions took huge, reckless risks in pursuit of quick profits and massive bonuses. When the dust settled and this binge of irresponsibility was over, several of the world's oldest and largest financial institutions had collapsed or were on the verge of doing so. Markets plummeted, credit dried up, and jobs were vanishing by the hundreds of thousands each month. We were on the precipice of a second Great Depression. To avoid this calamity, the American people, who were already struggling in their own right, were forced to rescue financial firms facing crises largely of their own creation. And that rescue, undertaken by the previous administration, was deeply offensive, but it was a necessary thing to do. And it succeeded in stabilizing the financial system and helping to avert that depression. Since that time, over the past year, my administration has recovered most of what the federal government provided to banks. And last week, I proposed a fee to be...
This isn't political, but let the facts be known that this crisis was started when the tech bubble collapsed. And when that happened, people took money out of stocks and started investing heavily into real estate. Okay? Now, with that said, rates were very low. And that created a very unique opportunity for home ownership. Barney Frank, the Senate Banking Committee chairman, whatever his title was, made it a point that all people, whether you had a pulse, a heart rate, whatever, it was your right to buy a home. It was your right. If you had no credit, it didn't matter. If you had bad credit, it didn't matter. It didn't matter because Barney Frank made it an agenda to give home ownership, to take away all the hard work that people had to have 20% down, 10% down, 5% down. They had to have good credit. They had to have a job. That didn't matter anymore. So what happened? A market was created. And that's what happened. A market was created. You gotta remember that interest rates, this whole thing was created, and they rise and you know, markets go up and come down, and that's what happens. That's what happens. Banks being able to trade, be like hedge funds and things like that. I mean, these are things that, yeah, maybe that isn't a good deal. But then again, banks borrow money. You deposit money in a bank, and then they go and they're supposed to make loans out of those monies. And to say that Obama said that never again will the American taxpayer be held hostage by banks that are too big to fail. There are a lot of banks that did fail. Are we better off now? I'm not quite sure. You know, it's a really big mystery. I mean, I think that the way things went down, the Fed, Ben Bernanke, they did a good job. They provided liquidity. That's what the Fed is supposed to do. The banks that failed, they're gone. You know, Washington Mutuals of the world. You know, what we didn't see was any of these big, huge executives. I hate to say Angelo Mazzillo, but we don't know what they were doing at Countrywide. We don't know what what the deals that they were making with companies like Bank of America or some of these other subprime lenders. We don't know what was going on because if you ask me, you know, if they're packaging a loan and they're selling that for, say, 5-6% on Wall Street, and then they're repackaging those loans and charging people 8-9%, I mean, there's a big premium there. I don't know. Was that the fraud that was going on? You know, AIG, who knows what they were doing? I mean, No one went down for it. Nobody. No one went to jail. And you know what? I don't know. History will repeat itself. It always does. It was a big FHA this week came out and said they're going to increase the limits for upfront mortgage insurance. What FHA does is they give these loans that you're able to put down 3.5%, but they charge you upfront a fee, like all banks do. And so they're raising that fee from 1.75% to 2.25%, which, I mean, it's sort of a big deal, but still, I mean, it's not really that huge. But I find it interesting that they were saying that if you had a credit score of lower than 580, that you'd have to be putting 10% down. Now, I don't know about you, but in my experience in the mortgage industry, I had 14 years of professional mortgage experience. Anyone with a 580 credit score, that's a pretty shitty score. So if they're going out and insuring these mortgages, someone has a credit score of 580, I mean, you really got to wonder what kind of loan that really is. How to fix the banking situation, it's a tough one because you want to provide liquidity, and liquidity is the whole key of it. If banks don't have money to lend, then people can't grow their business, they can't buy homes, they can't borrow money for personal reasons. So it's a big problem. Overregulation, I think that's a big problem. I don't think that regulating, with the feds now regulating for mortgages and mortgage, bankers and lenders and mortgage brokers, I mean, that's not the way. You can't overregulate because that definitely defers people from getting into the business. Interesting news, Supreme Court, they are going to allow corporations and union laborers to be able to endorse political parties and their candidates. And I don't know. I mean, I don't think we need big corporate people to take their money and freely spend it on politics. But that's just my opinion. 30-year fixed rates did well this week. They were down about 0.1%. 30-year fixed decreased to 5% from 5.13%. And also the 15-year also adjusted about 0.1% to 4.33%. And next week, we're going to have December existing home sales on the 25th. So that should be some big news. Typically speaking, home sales are usually slow in December. January, it's just the holidays time of season. So we'll see what happens. Greg Afarian, Virtual Media Realty. Let me know if you have any questions. Hope you're doing well. Hope you have a great weekend. Out for now.